This is the story of Lucas Merritt and his wife Emily Merritt. They had built something that looked, from the outside, like a good life. A house in a quiet neighborhood, dinners on most weeknights, a shared calendar that ran with the kind of efficiency that can be mistaken for intimacy. Lucas loved Emily the way some people love a place they've lived too long, deeply, habitually, and with a growing inability to see it clearly. Emily, for her part, had not stopped loving him so much as she had stopped believing he saw her, the real her. The one with ambitions she'd learned to soften in conversation and needs she'd learned to frame as preferences. What was coming hadn't been born from malice. It had been born from years of small silences, of needs unspoken and unmet, of two people sharing a bed while living, emotionally in adjacent rooms. The thematic weight of their story is not betrayal in its loudest form, but something quieter and more corrosive. The way two people can be utterly sincere in their love, and still, slowly, fail each other completely. The night before Emily left for the conference, Lucas grilled salmon. It was a Tuesday, which meant it was his night to cook, a division they'd established sometime in the third year of marriage and had never formally reviewed. He stood at the stove pressing the fillet with a spatula, unnecessarily he knew, but his hands needed occupation, while Emily moved behind him, sliding her carry-on into the hallway and checking something on her phone with the focused, slightly withdrawn expression she'd been wearing more and more lately. "Portland's supposed to be rainy the whole week," he said. "I know." She didn't look up. "I packed layers." The exchange was not unkind. That was the thing about their conversations now. They were never unkind. They were courteous, functional, stripped of friction, but also stripped of texture. Lucas had noticed this. He wasn't sure if he'd said so. They ate at the kitchen table with the television off, which was something they both still valued, this one remnant of the deliberate life they'd once tried to build together. Emily talked about the conference, a 2-day professional development seminar for senior marketing managers in her division, and Lucas listened with what he knew was genuine interest in her career, even if he couldn't always summon enthusiasm for the specifics. She was good at her work. He admired that about her. He told himself he told her so often enough. Their neighbor, Doug Farrell, knocked on the door around 8:30. He lived 2 houses down, a man in his mid-40s who'd gone through a divorce 3 years back and since acquired the particular social forwardness of someone who has lost the buffer of a partner. Lucas liked him. Emily was cordial with him in the way she was cordial with most people, present, pleasant, and impossible to read. "Just bringing back your extension cord," Doug said, handing it to Lucas on the porch. He glanced past Lucas at Emily clearing dishes in the kitchen. "Emily heading out again?" "Conference," Lucas said. "Portland. She goes to a lot of those." It was an innocent observation. Doug said it the way someone might note that a neighbor's car was always parked on the street. Not accusatory, just remarking on a pattern. Lucas didn't register it as anything other than small talk. He thanked Doug for the cord, closed the door, and returned to the kitchen, where Emily was rinsing the glasses with her back to him. They watched a documentary after dinner, something about oceanic geology, chosen neutrally, neither of them passionate about it. Emily fell asleep on the couch around 10, her feet tucked under a blanket, her face unguarded in sleep in a way it rarely was when she was awake. Lucas watched her for a moment before gently touching her shoulder. "Bed," he said. She woke halfway, moved through the house on autopilot, and was asleep again before he finished brushing his teeth. He lay beside her in the dark and listened to her breathe. This, he thought, was the best version of them. Quiet, warm, near each other. He knew that was a concerning thought. He filed it as he filed many thoughts, under things to examine later. In the morning she was efficient and cheerful and dressed before 6. He made coffee while she checked her bag a final time. At the door, she kissed him, a real kiss, not a peck, and said, "I'll call when I land." "Safe flight," he said. He stood in the doorway and watched her car back out of the driveway. The street was pale with early light. He had the dim, formless feeling that he was watching something he should have paid closer attention to, though he couldn't have said what or why or since when. She called when she landed, as promised, and again that evening. Brief calls, ambient with hotel sounds, her voice warm but clipped with tiredness. Lucas sat at his desk both times, grading papers from the high school history class he taught for 11 years. He was good at his job, the way people are good at things they've done long enough to do without fully arriving. He answered her questions about his day in the honest, unhurried manner that was his nature, and he didn't ask enough about hers. He knew this about himself. He believed she knew he knew it. He wasn't sure either of them had decided what to do with the knowledge. The third day, she didn't call. He told himself there was an evening session. He told himself conferences were exhausting, that she was probably in a group dinner or an informal debrief with colleagues, that he was borrowing trouble. He graded 6 more papers and made a bowl of cereal for dinner and went to bed at 10:15 with his phone on the nightstand and woke at 2 in the morning to find no missed calls. He texted, "Just checking in. Hope the sessions are going well." He left the phone face up and watched the ceiling for a while before he slept. She responded at 7:15 the next morning. "Sorry, dinner ran long and I crashed. All good. Miss you." He read the message while making coffee. "Miss you." She didn't say it often, which was why, when she did, it carried weight. He wrote back, "Miss you too." He meant it. He was almost certain she meant it. That afternoon, a colleague named Rachel stopped by his classroom after the last bell. She taught English, 3 doors down, and they had the easy friendship of people who eat lunch together more often than not and have never been anything other than that. She was sharp-tongued and perceptive in equal measure, and she had never pretended to be neutral on the subject of his marriage. "You look like you haven't slept," she said. "I slept. Badly." He acknowledged this with a tilt of his head. Rachel sat on the edge of a student desk with her arms crossed, watching him stack folders with the mild patience of someone waiting for him to say what he actually meant. "Emily's at a conference," he said. "You mentioned. She didn't call last night." Rachel said nothing. That was one of the things he valued about her. She didn't rush to fill silences with reassurance. "It's probably nothing," he said. "Probably," she said. He looked at her. "You're not going to tell me I'm overthinking." "You are overthinking," she said, "but that doesn't mean you're wrong about the thing you're overthinking about." He put the folders in his bag and zipped it. "You know what I think sometimes?" He paused, looking at the whiteboard, at the half-erased timeline of the First World War he'd left up for the next day. "I think we stopped, finding each other interesting. Not in a cruel way. Just, she has a version of me she mostly believes in, and I have a version of her, and we both stopped checking to see if the versions were current." Rachel was quiet for a moment. Then she said, in an oddly distant voice, slightly tilted, as if speaking past him to something just over his shoulder, "I don't know. Maybe like this story or subscribe or something." Lucas turned to look at her. "What?" She blinked, frowned faintly. "Sorry. I don't know why I said that." There was a beat of genuine bewilderment between them, and then it passed, and Rachel straightened and picked up her bag, and the moment dissolved back into the conversation as if it had never quite happened. "Go home, Lucas," she said. "Call her if you're worried." He drove home through the gray afternoon and did not call. Not because he wasn't worried. He was, in a low, pressurized way he'd been trained by temperament to keep below the surface, but because he wasn't sure what tone of voice to use, and tone, he had learned, was everything with Emily. He didn't want to sound accusatory. He didn't want to sound needy. He wanted to sound like himself, and he couldn't locate himself clearly enough to manage it. That evening, he found a receipt on the counter. It was from a restaurant, Archer and Vine, according to the header, dated 3 weeks ago, for dinner for 2, in a city that was not Portland, not anywhere near Portland. He stood holding it under the kitchen light for a long time. Emily had clearly cleaned out her jacket pockets before packing and left it there without thinking, the way people leave evidence of their lives in the places they feel safest. He set it back on the counter. He made a cup of tea. He sat with the receipt and his tea and didn't call her. She came home on a Friday evening, rolling her carry-on across the front entry tiles with the efficient, slightly windswept energy of a person returned from effort. She was wearing the gray travel jacket he'd always liked on her. Her hair was down. She looked, he thought, rested, more rested than a 2-day conference should have warranted, and he noticed that and hated that he noticed it. He put the receipt in the kitchen drawer, not hidden, just out of sight. He'd thought about it every day since finding it, in the patient, almost academic way he approached most things that frightened him. Dinner was takeout, her preference when she returned from travel. They talked about the flight, about a colleague of hers named Patrick who had apparently given an embarrassing presentation, about the roof gutter that needed cleaning before winter. All of it was real, none of it was the point. After dinner, she poured wine and they sat in the living room and the house was quiet, and he thought, now or lose the moment entirely. I found a receipt, he said. He kept his voice even. Jacket pocket. Restaurant called Archer and Vine. 3 weeks ago, somewhere that wasn't Portland. She went very still, not dramatically, just the particular stillness of a person whose internal processing has suddenly taken all available resources. Lucas, I'm not asking you to explain everything right now, he said. I'm asking you to tell me whether there's something I should know. She set her wine glass on the coffee table with careful deliberateness. She looked at her hands. There's a man, she said. His name is Connor. He's in the division in Seattle. She stopped, chose words with visible effort. We've been spending time together. At conferences, outside of conferences. How long? 7 months. He absorbed this. The number had a weight that surprised him. Not the shock of it, but the duration. The whole architecture of 7 months that had existed inside their marriage without his knowledge. Is it? He found he couldn't quite finish the sentence. It isn't nothing, she said quietly. That would be a dishonest answer, but it's also not what I want instead of this. She gestured vaguely, meaning us, meaning the house, meaning him. I think I needed to feel. She stopped again, shook her head slightly. I'm not going to give you an explanation that sounds like an excuse. I'm not asking for that. And he wasn't, precisely. He was asking for something harder to name. The actual truth of her experience uncensored. Did I miss something? Something real? You didn't see me disappearing, she said. I don't know if that's blame. It might just be description. He thought about the receipt on the counter, about the calls he hadn't made, about versions of each other they'd stopped bothering to update. I need time, he said. Not I need you to leave. Not I forgive you. Just time. The honest, specific currency of a man who didn't know yet what he was going to do with what he'd been given. She nodded. She didn't cry. He was grateful for that, not because crying would have been manipulative, but because he wasn't sure he had room for her grief alongside his own. He slept in the guest room that night, not as punishment, just because the space felt necessary. 3 months passed the way months do when a marriage is under evaluation, slowly in the present, disorienting in retrospect. They did not separate. They did not, as Lucas's sister Karen somewhat pointedly suggested, go to couples therapy. What they did was something harder to categorize. They continued living together with a heightened attentiveness to each other, a careful quality of presence that was both more than they'd had before and haunted by what had made it necessary. Emily ended things with Connor. She told Lucas plainly one evening, without ceremony, and he received it plainly. He didn't ask for details. He had decided, somewhere in the weeks after, that the details weren't the point. The point was the landscape of their marriage that had made those details possible. She had her own accounting to make, though she made it mostly internally. With friends, particularly her closest one, a woman named Diane who'd known them both for years, she described the situation with a careful self-awareness that was genuine and also, just slightly, edited. She talked about feeling unseen, about the ways her ambitions had been incidentally diminished in a household built around her husband's steadier emotional thermostat. She said with conviction that she wasn't making excuses. What she was doing, and understood she was doing, was building a narrative that allowed her to remain livable to herself. This was not dishonesty exactly. It was the ordinary human work of incorporating a shameful thing into a bearable life. Lucas, for his part, had grown quieter in ways he didn't fully understand yet. He called Rachel less. He graded papers with greater care and less patience for the essays that made no argument, that simply restated the question and called it an answer. He had been doing that, he understood, for years. In his marriage, in his own self-examination, restating the surface question, calling it answered. One evening in November, he drove past the restaurant where he and Emily had had their first date, a small Italian place on the west side of the city that was now a mattress store. He sat in the parking lot for a few minutes, not in grief, not in nostalgia, but in the quiet acknowledgement that time had moved without his full permission, as time does. He'd been in love with her. He was still in love with her, in the complicated, informed way you love someone once you've seen them clearly. That clarity was not comfortable. It was, however, real. He came home to find her at the kitchen table with her laptop reading something that made her frown faintly. She looked up when he came in. He stood in the doorway still in his coat. "Are we trying?" he asked. "I'm trying," she said. "So am I," he said. "I just wanted to make sure we were both aware." She looked at him for a moment, really looked at him with the attentiveness they'd been learning to offer each other in small doses. "I'm aware," she said. He took off his coat and hung it by the door. He sat down across from her and asked what she was reading, and she told him, and they talked about it for a while, and the conversation was the best they'd had in a long time, not because it was easy, but because both of them were in it fully. It was not enough. It was also not nothing. Lucas understood, sitting there, that these were not opposites. The following April, Emily was offered a promotion, regional director, based in Seattle. It was, by any reasonable measure, what she had been working toward for 6 years. It was also, and they both understood this without quite saying it, located in the same city where Connor worked. She told him on a Wednesday evening. She told him clearly and without softening it, which he appreciated. She had been doing that more, offering him the actual information rather than the arranged version. He sat with it. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "I want to take it," she said. "And she paused. "I want you to know that it's about the job, that I know how it looks. I know I can't prove it." "I know," he said. "Do you?" There was no challenge in the question. She sounded like she actually wanted to know. He thought about it. Honestly. The way he'd been trying to do everything, honestly and without the false floor of assumed understanding. "I believe you about the job," he said. "I don't know if that's enough for me to follow you there." She nodded slowly. The kitchen was very quiet. The refrigerator made its small ongoing sound. "I don't know what I need you to do," she said. "I don't think I have the right to need anything from you right now." "You're still my wife," he said. "You have the right to need things." Her expression shifted. Something passed across it that he couldn't name. Somewhere between gratitude and grief, and she looked away toward the window. "Lucas," she said after a while, "do you think we would have gotten here, to this place where we actually look at each other, without all the terrible middle part?" He considered the question seriously. It deserved that. "No," he said. "I don't think we would have." She turned back to him. "Is that enough of a reason to stay?" It was the most honest question she had ever asked him. He understood, hearing it, that it was a question she had been holding for months. Not manipulation, not strategy, just the raw arithmetic of a woman who had broken something and was trying, with insufficient tools, to understand if it could hold weight again. He didn't answer immediately. He was, by nature, a man who needed to get things right before he said them. And this was not a question that rewarded speed. "I don't know yet," he said, "but I haven't stopped asking." She absorbed this, set her hands flat on the table. "Okay," she said. It wasn't resolution. It wasn't the beginning of a clean new chapter. It was two people in a kitchen in April, having finally arrived at the level of honesty their marriage had always needed and had never, until now, been willing to sustain. Whether it was too late was a question that couldn't be answered from inside the moment. That was the nature of such moments. They could only be seen clearly afterward, and by then you were already somewhere else. He made tea. She closed her laptop. They sat together in the quiet house, neither of them speaking, and that silence was different from all the silences that had come before it. not because it was comfortable, because it was true.